Hi, come up. I don't think there will be many more human lives to experience. She's winding down here, this human experiment. Well, she better not be the bear that's messing around here. Because last year, that bear was a pain in the ass. Yeah. And my Saskatoon berries are one bear can knock a whole bunch of berries on the ground. Like it just grabs the whole thing and just rip. Yep, it does. From my perspective, of course, I've been looking at it for a decade, is that it ties up all the loose ends, every single one of them, even down to resolving history long paradoxes. But for some reason, the route in which the reasoning that I took, that route, academics don't seem to think that it's of value, or that, I don't know, they don't follow the reasoning, or it's not somehow not adhering to their rules or something, because you and me and half a dozen other people see it, and dozens and dozens and dozens that I've sent it to don't see it. So it's very strange, hey? Like, I I don't know if you've ever looked for something, and you've right, when you're looking for something, you've got a picture, right, in your mind's eye of what you're looking for, right? It's like a puzzle piece. You have an idea of what it looks like. So you're looking for that, right? You're looking for that shape to go click, there it is over there. But I think all these people, these academics, that what they have in their head, what they're looking for, they can't see it. They can't see non-conceptuality as being what they're looking for, because they're looking for something in a different package, right? Right? They don't, they're not seeing what's right there, obviously in front of them, because the vision that they have in their mind's eye of what the truth is something out of academia, right? It's just a subtle variation on some fucking theme, right? But this is the only thing that I don't understand, how people don't understand. It's just bizarre to me, right? It's like they can't think properly anymore. It's like academics have lost the ability to actually think for themselves, right? Yeah, that's it, right? They want to be taught it. No one wants to learn, no one wants to discover it for themselves. They just think that everything has already been learned, and now that just need to be taught it. Quite literally taught what to think, not how to. That's it. Yeah. And of course, if the assumption is that academia is all correct, then there's no one's even questioning it anymore, right? They're just completely frontal lobe deep in the delusion, because the assumption is, well, it's all correct, right? So we don't have to look at academia itself to be part of the problem. Hmm. Well, think about it. These big universities, aren't they there for profit? Like, they're for profit institutions, aren't they? They're there to actually make money for shareholders. So it boils down to, how much money can we make by charging tuition and keep the cycle going? It's almost like the pharmaceutical industry wants to keep people sick so they can keep selling their shit, right? It's the same thing. Is that as long as the delusion keeps going and academia keeps operating, then they're going to keep making money. But of course, the money that they're making isn't valuable anymore, because it's all just printed. We're quite a mess. Everywhere we look, we're in a mess. Yeah, for sure. I didn't realize the necessity for God, because there is the reality is transcendent of this. So there has to be, in the mind body problem, there has to be this third thing. There has to be the third singularity, right? There has to be a singularity at the heart of the dualism. And it all makes sense now. It all makes sense why there's God in every society, their own version of a higher power, right? A higher power. Non-conceptuality is the hardest religion. Like Bitcoiners, Bitcoin maximalists like to say that Bitcoin is the hardest form of money because there's no inflation, right? Like even gold, you can still mine. It inflates by like 2% per year. The the gold holdings, right? So Bitcoin is the hardest money, and non-conceptuality is the hardest, truest religion, because it immediately it doesn't go through all the rigmarole. It just transcends immediately its own teaching. The teaching is the immediate transcendence of that teaching. Whereas most religions, they don't want to do that, or people that are touting religions, because it's all about ego. So they don't want their system to stop, right? They want it to keep going. And then you need an evangelism to keep the Ponzi going. That's why non-conceptuality doesn't push um, evangelism at all. Everyone must come to it on their own terms. And sometimes it takes dying, hey Rusty, to realize what the truth is. Well, that's what happened to Ramana, right? Ramana Maharshi, through a death experience, became enlightened, realized his enlightenment. Well, the story is in a book that when he was 16, he was lying in bed, and he felt this overwhelming terror that he was going to die. So the story is that he held his breath and he pretended to die, and he visualized his body dead and being burnt on a funeral pyre. But I heard another story that he said he said that he actually died, that he was in a death state for about 20 minutes, and then when he came out of it, he was fully enlightened. Yeah, it's a fascinating story. And we know it's not messed with because it happened like 80 years ago, right? So it's true. It's not, has been amended. Yeah, it's a whole new level of the game. Well, it's the way, I think the way the game is designed, right, is that there's iterations, right? It's fractal on fractal on fractal. So each circadian rhythm has its own, right? Each day has its own cycle. That's so the waking state, the frame of reference for the waking state, which we call life, is the sleep state, right? So the sleep state is the frame of reference for the waking state. And then the death state is the frame of reference for the the life for the life of a person, right? The frame of reference for the entire life of a person is the death state. And then the frame of reference for an entire species is the extinction state, right? Well, I'm that's how I feel about my salvia experiences, is that the nervous system is tweaked in some way and something new is revealed, right? Something that was is there all the time, but because of the way maybe the nervous system is rigged up, we can't experience it, an actual physical experience of it. So yeah, these experiences while living can really give us insight. Like our true nature, the mona, the stillness, the silence is always here, but we just don't notice it because our nervous system is programmed in such a manner to pick up things that are exterior. Wow. But that's probably the first person view, right? And the ego is probably the third person view. We just have it inverted. You see what I mean, right? Is that that other view is probably the real first person view. Yeah. That's the true self, which is always one step removed from if we think we're inside here, right? It's not inside here. See, I was thinking it was because now I'm sure that you'll agree that you're not fully Brahmana Maharshi enlightened, right? So that's why you came back, right? Otherwise, if you were enlightened, fully enlightened when you died, technically we wouldn't be talking here, would we? So the reason why you were still thinking, right? Because the last time I said, well, if you were truly in your natural state, there wouldn't even be thoughts, right? Like you wouldn't be remembering, you probably wouldn't be remembering anything about if you right. So in the true natural state, there wouldn't even be thoughts. There would just be pure awareness, unbounded, pure awareness with no content, which sounds bizarre, right? But But in the death state, there's still tendencies, right? That there's still roots. It's a new seed, right? That's planted from the old plant. So it'll be the same species of plant, but it'll be a different plant, right? So you'll still be a human, but you won't be exactly, obviously, the same human that you left when you died. Your world will be very, very similar to the other world that you just left, the new world that emerges. Because all of your experience of this life will be in seed form for the arising of the next world, of your next world. Yeah, just like fractals, right? That's somehow they're different, but it's very hard to distinguish because it's in one way it's all change, right? So you can't really distinguish where the change happens, but it's always happening. It's like a sunset, right? The sunset is always changing, but it happens so slowly. Yeah, it's just like the salvia experience. It's really difficult to remember anything and bring that experience back into this realm. It's like there's something that erases the memory or the language is incapable of describing. I think that's what it is that we don't even have language to describe what's happening in the death state or what's happening on a salvia trip. Yeah, time is one of these things where if you just have it just takes a subtle shift in perspective to have it that you are the unchanging, the self is the unchanging timeless frame of reference upon which all occurs, right? So less thoughts, less time. Basically, the less thoughts you have, the less you will experience time. Because time is the separation between two events. And if there's no thoughts, then there's just one event, right? It takes thought to break up this whole. If you look at the life of your name here as one event, if you had no thoughts between your birth and your death, then that would all be one event, wouldn't it? You would experience no time if you didn't have thoughts, if you didn't distinguish one event from another. Yeah, and those are, yeah, you mean the people that kill themselves? Think about that. Why have there been so many humans? Why are humans it seems like we're the only species that's capable of killing ourselves? And why do we do it? We're trying to escape this realm, trying to find a shortcut to beating the game. It doesn't work. Well, I mean, whatever you seek out from the universe, it's apt to give it to you. Whatever you put your attention on, it will probably just give more of that. Yeah, that's all the mind realm, right? The non-physical realm that psychedelics and death experiences open up to people. Like DMT seems to be revealing a mostly mathematical thought realm, geometrical. No, I don't remember seeing any entities or anything like that on Salvia. Just complete ego annihilation, that's all. Just absolutely no sense of self at all. Like no sense, sorry, no sense of identity. There's always a sense of self, but see, people think they don't recognize that even in these states, right, is that they're still there to witness the state. They're still witnessing a state. They think they are the state that they're witnessing, but they're not. You're not the state that you are witnessing, no matter what state that is. So it's like you didn't disappear, just your identity did, just your ego did. And that's what causes all the terror, the existential terror that brings the world back. Yeah, like it was really recognized. Like I recognized that there never was a Roy Dobson. Never. Like that identity is a fiction, just like a character in a book or in a movie. It's a piece of fiction. Roy Dobson is a fictional character that's never existed. Not I shouldn't say that's never existed. That is a fictional character. And the The thing is that they don't recognize how much they're actually suffering, right? Because they still have the source of their addiction readily available. So a heroin addict might say that their life is suffering even while they still have access to heroin. Now, can you imagine when a heroin addict has no more heroin at all? Like, that's going to be suffering. So when when the internet goes down and nothing's coming off out of this screen anymore, people are going to fucking lose it, right? Humanity will go absolutely apeshit crazy if we didn't have our soother, our crack pipe, our heroin injection, right? Once this goes, humanity will really come to grips with how much suffering they're going through. I can't even get people to sit in a chair for an hour with the screen off to look at their own thoughts and to notice that they can't stop their own mind. They have no control over their own mind. I can't even get people to do that. Because why would you do that when you can just watch YouTube videos? Yeah. Uh, yeah, the whole anxiety thing, right? Is just a chemical materialistic problem, right? If you just deal with the symptoms, that'll that's what they're doing. They're just dealing with symptoms. Yeah, we're humanity, if we didn't have all of this technology and all the chemicals to divert our attention away from the deep suffering that we are experiencing, and when it's gone, all karmic due comes paid. All karmic debt is paid. MMT doesn't work. All debts are paid. And just think of the karma that California, the ego that is California, think of how much karmic debt that has to pay, because it's California is the heart of illusion, right? It's the birthplace basically of the addiction to the screen, right? You both Hollywood, the TV industry, and the gaming industry is all out of California. Like, so yeah, I would expect that California is going to go through a lot of problems because it's the source of basically all addiction for all of humanity to the screen. If you're in California, move out. Yeah, right? Like everything, everything that's coming out of that screen, basically, the source of humanity's addiction is from California. So that's why it went from paradise a few decades ago. It was the place to live in the entire world, and now it's a shithole. It's a shithole, and it's becoming more of a shithole because of all this karma. Like, can you think of anything less substantial than movies and video games? No wonder they're so messed up. Oh, at this point, I just keep repeating the same thing over and over again with just subtle changes to hopefully someone will finally it'll click with someone. I just again, Rusty, I just don't understand how people don't understand this. Well, and here's the thing though, is that there's a difference between one person just saying the same thing over and over and over again, and one person saying a bunch of stuff, like just a shotgun approach rather than a laser sniper rifle approach. So teachers who don't really know the answer to what they're teaching will have that shotgun approach, I think. They just throw everything out there. Like Vervaeke, John Vervaeke. He's got a fifty episode series on the meaning crisis. 50 episodes of at least an hour each. Rusty, this is it, right? This is, I feel that what I've got, what has come to me in the last 7 years, especially, is due to this message, is due to non-conceptuality working in the background at a deep level with just a few people. I believe it is probably, if relatively speaking, if we're judging things, if we're measuring things, that it's probably more important to lead one person to their enlightenment than let's say feeding the entire human race, right? Like giving everyone on the planet enough food to live. Like just liberating one person is probably about that important. Yeah, so I agree. And I really feel that the universe has my back because of this, because I'm the one this message is coming through for whatever fucking reason. I'm the one that's relating this message from the creator. Like the people don't find the people that don't find this stillness, they will be so lost when all this comes crashing down. They'll have no harbor, they'll have no anchor. Yeah, I completely, yeah, like obviously they're not quite as intense as actually dying like you did, but but in the float tank, I've had existential angst, like you just being in the float tank, it the ego at times wants to freak out, right? Like it's really close to non-existence in there. So every time I get in that float tank, it's a little bit of an ego death as well. So that feeling that I want to get out of the tank and have an experience, some fucking sound or something, that's what I feel like people will experience only way greater. Like the terror, the existential terror of believing that you're not existing will instantly, they'll be looking for something now. I need something now, right? So yeah, that's a new life world pops out of that desire to want an experience because you're freaking out because you think you don't exist. But in Western civilization, we're not taught to think about death, prepare for it, let alone not even think about it or talk about it, let alone prepare for it. Like this is something that we all have to go through, and it's the biggest thing. And yet we're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to think about it. We're not allowed to prepare for it. Oh yeah. Yeah, when the inflow of the senses has been diminished, there's different experiences. Hey, Danissa. Danissa, when are you moving here? You can grow all the food that you want here. Like-minded people. I guess being from a different country make that a problem. That'd be fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. In a year from now, our crypto investment will be worth millions of dollars again. And then maybe if it's more than yeah, if it's more than 4 million, if we cash in for more than 4 million, maybe we'll just fly all the non-conceptualists out here on our tab. Wouldn't that be great to have Rusty and Denissa and Solution Seeker here? That'd be great. Rusty, you just live down the way there, so it'll be cheap to get you here. Well, I think you're only about a 6-hour drive, are you not? You're not very far away at all. But I was thinking for like the people that like Paige and I want a community out here, right? And the most important thing is that we're all egoless, right? So we all have to be non-conceptualists because that's the way a community is going to get along. Is if we're all focused on the spiritual, because then we shouldn't have any problems as a community. And I was thinking that if we do find appropriate people and they live outside the country, well, then it's all about timing after that. Because I think that when shit really starts hitting the fan, the last thing that they're going to be worried about is Denissa from Europe, whether she makes it back home or not, right? No one's going to give a shit, right? So just fly here near the end and just stay, I think. Right, Denissa? This is this is paradise. I know you've seen me walking around here before. No, I can't subdivide. I can't. I'm in the agricultural land reserve. But you can come stay here because here's the thing is that it's the ALR, Agricultural Land Reserve, so I can't subdivide, but there's no zoning here. So as far as I know, I could have 100 people living here on my land. They couldn't own it. It would have to be I'm the king. um, but I think as long as it's up to code, people can throw up buildings and stay here because there's no zoning. Yeah, dude. I don't know about the floating, like I don't know about the rules on having a home on a lake though, right? Because like it's 200 meters. There's the big lake right there, 200 meters away, right there. I've got 30 hectares here and 8,000 square feet of garden and a pond and a chicken coop and a shop. No chickens yet. And I don't know how to use the shop because I'm not mechanically inclined. That's awesome. Well, it's only 110 kilometers long, and there's no one this way. If you go down this road 3 kilometers, there's no one. Like you could just there's no one that way. There's no one. After 2 kilometers for like another 30K, no one. And this lake is very still. Most of the time, it's incredibly still. You know, it's funny, they have an old ferry here. Like the old ferry is still parked over at the dock there, I believe. Now that would make a mansion, a floating mansion. Can you imagine a ferry? Like it's probably 100 feet long. So what do you do in the winter with your home, with your floating boat home? Oh, I thought that is it on the ocean or on a lake? Oh, okay. Well, I'm getting a mill and I've got so much wood on my land. So if you could build your own little shack, go for it. I could even help. How do you move that? Isn't it 80 feet? Didn't you say it's huge? Yeah, you said you have a chainsaw mill, but I don't want to go through chain. I want to get an actual woodland 130 max or whatever the hell it is. Good for 30-foot, 30-inch logs. Mm. You know how to sail? You have a sailboat. Like that takes skills, right? Major skills. Wow. I don't have a boat yet. Well, I don't think that I need to learn too much about boating. This this lake is 110 kilometers long, and there's hardly anyone ever on it. And it's only like 5 kilometers wide. I need to learn fishing more than boating. I guess the two go hand in hand. Oh yeah, set up some nets. Won't get in trouble at all. But that's a valuable skill for the end of the world when there is no more conversation conservation officers, and people are starving. To be able to cast a net and catch dozens of fish, that would be something you could teach me for sure. No, the neighbor here, right next door, he fishes a lot. He likes char. He tries to get char. See, the plan that Paige and I have is that we're going to build our own, and it sounds ridiculous that we're not going to be staying in this house, but we're going to build another small house just for Paige and I, and it's going to be the keep. It's going to be basically a bunker. It's basically going to be a bunker. Above, partially above ground bunker where Paige and I will sleep. And then this can be kind of a community for people who don't maybe have enough resources to build their own home, but are going to fit for the community because they're non-conceptualists. They can stay here in a kind of a communal. There'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms available in this mansion, this castle here, which is pretty nice. And then Paige and I will be sleeping in our house in the bunker, and we'll spend time hanging out here. But the plan is to have 4 or 5 people or 6 people living in this, in kind of a communal situation. And then whoever has their own resources, they could build their own house on the property. I bet you all of us have done some thoughts, some thinking about, well, if there is a nuclear war, yeah, yeah, but the thing is that there's one of the stipulations, right? Is that Paige and I are the king and queen, and what we say goes. Like that's the way it's going to be. So there has to be really stringent rules, and the person that the 8 or 9 or 10 people that we select will be handpicked to not be problems, right? We don't need any interior problems in a community that's trying to survive the end of the world. Holy cow, Rusty. Yeah, see, Rusty, to me, you're kind of like the ideal, as long as you're healthy, like as long as you can do stuff. You're obviously down with the non-conceptuality thing, and you're handy. Like you have skills that I do not. So yeah, you just live down the freaking road, right? Basically. So you're you're obviously a prime candidate for being a community member here at Moksha Farms. We're developing a water system, right? Because I've got a spring, like I've got water just running out of the ground, a natural spring water, 1,000 gallons just run out of the ground every day here. So that's another thing. How we're going to make money is that we're going to bottle the fresh natural spring water and sell it for cheaper than they're selling the processed, the filtered water, the reverse osmosis water. We can sell it for cheaper, and it's spring water. So that's another. I might even drill another well, right? Lots of plans. Yeah, but what would you rather drink? Reverse osmosis water that they process out of town water, or natural fresh spring water from an artesian well that's selling for 20% cheaper than the stuff that they're processing in town, right? Spring water, obviously, natural spring water is going to sell more than reverse osmosis water, I would think. Yeah, exactly right. So, yeah, we just run it through filters, 3 different size filters. We don't add anything. We just filter out any possible bad bugs that are in the water, put it in a container and sell it. And all the food that we're gonna grow will be completely natural. Oh, it's just this is yes and yes. I've never seen an elk. I've seen moose right out there. Deer every day. The- Yesterday, I almost stepped on a fawn. I almost stepped on it. It's this big, and like every day, there's deer walking through my front lawn, and I've seen poop that's this big. So that must be elk, right? Poop that's as big as your thumb, right? The chocolate covered almonds must be elk. So I don't know if you're a hunter, but boy, you just walk up to it, and put a gun right to its freaking head, basically, if you wanted to. But I'm not a hunter. I'm a fisherman. But everything that's required to get through this extinction phase as best as possible is here. Perfect growing medium. I've got like 200 square cubic, 200, at least 200 cubic meters of perfect growing medium that I could build another 8,000 square feet of garden with, and a lake right there with infinite fish, water running out of the ground. I'm so blessed. It's because of the practice. Mm. There's just so much happiness and bliss and contentment that's available for everyone, and it's so I have to let go of the frustration of just like, all right, well, I guess you don't want peace and happiness and contentment, so that's okay too. But when they're complaining about not having peace and contentment and happiness, and then I show them directly how to get it, and then they still don't get it, they don't engage in it. You just have to let it go. It's like, okay, well, you'll wake up someday. It's just so obvious and so simple and so accessible. I when I started crushing my Christianity when I was 30, I started reading a bunch of books and then I started meditating. And the only other people that I knew that meditated were Buddhists. So I met a Buddhist person and I joined there's their Zendo. And then I came across Ramana Maharshi's teaching, and then I started talking to the Buddhists, my Buddhist friends, about Ramana Maharshi. And then shortly after that, I got kicked out of the Zendo. Kicked out. She gave me an official letter with an official stamp from the Zendo saying that unless I adhered to what they want me to, their practices, then I couldn't engage in the Zendo. So it was at that point where I thanked her and said, "Well, I'm not Buddhist. I'm obviously not Buddhist." So after 10 years of calling myself a Buddhist, I recognized that Buddhism is and Zen is just another religion. So I don't do Zen anymore. It's ridiculous that you have to do this and you have to do this and everything has to be perfectly aligned and you can't move and like it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So now I'm not Buddhist anymore. And my meditation practice is all the time. It's constant. Like there is never a time where I'm not engaged in meditation in a way. You could say that. Everything is zazen. Zazen is nothing. And I'll even tell you the problem with Zen and Buddhism is they don't recognize the illusory nature of experience. That's it. They don't recognize that even the physical realm of the senses is also an illusion and not reality. So they don't they don't go as deep as they need to for realization. They're still subtly hanging on to the physical realm. Like these Zen teachers that I've sat with, what would they would meditate for their hour or whatever, sit in zazen, get in their fancy robes, and then as soon as they're done, they would jump on YouTube, on Facebook, and engage in all of these trying to make the world a better place. It's like, well, you just spent that time, I'm assuming, stopping your thoughts because that's what meditation is. It's about finding this abiding in thought-free awareness. And then immediately upon after that, they just get the mind worrying again, right? It's they don't understand what the meditation is for. The meditation is to abide in thought-free awareness. So just stay in that thought-free awareness all the time. That's it. Yeah, but what what do they mean by void? See, they don't even really believe in a self. So to them, it would be a void. So there's no such thing as a lack or a void, right? There's no such thing as a void or a lack of existence or non-existence. So there has to be a self there. So Buddhists aren't looking for the self. They're not looking for reality. They're just going into the void. They don't recognize that the thought-free state is something. Hey, solution seeker. So anyway, my 10-year experience with Buddhism showed me that Buddhism is a religion. It's more effective than Christianity because it engages in meditation, but they don't realize that it's all meditation. That's all it is just stopping the voice in your head. And Zen doesn't do that. They don't say that they need to stop the voice in their head. And that's it. So it, I would highly recommend if you're a Buddhist to just transcend all that now and just engage in the one step path, which is just finding thought free awareness and just staying in it. and there's no cone that's going to lead you there. It's you just find it. You just find the thought-free space. Oh, here it is. No koan required. Rusty's going to move here and build a floating, either a floating house or a cabin in the back. I yeah, basically I wouldn't engage in their hokey pokey routines. Like it was really weird. Like she'd be doing some chanting, and that it would like they'd do chanting, and then at the end they'd be screaming stuff, and then they do this fancy little walk where you walk with attention, but it's a silly walk, right? So I wouldn't engage in their spiritual hokey pokey routines because I noticed after coming to Ramana Maharshi, they're all just spiritual hokey pokey routines. There's no reason for any of it. So I just basically I quit engaging. And then she said, well, you have to do the spiritual hokey pokey routines with us and stop talking about Ramana Maharshi so much. So I got kicked out on an official piece of paper with a header and official stamp of the Zendo and everything. And my Buddhist friend from of about a decade, she stopped talking to me because of my theory, this whole non-conceptuality thing, the whole thing, especially the math part, because her son is a mathematician. He just became a professor of mathematics in a university. So she stopped being my friend because of my association with Ramana Maharshi and my engaging in that practice instead of Buddhism. The hokey pokey isn't what it's all about. You're funny. I know, right? It's why do they meditate? Why do they sit and go through excruciating pain for some of these weekends? You can't move. You have to sit here and meditate in agony. What are you trying to do? Like, what are you doing? You're stopping your thoughts, right? That's what you're doing. That's the whole purpose of meditation, is to stop thinking. So then when you're done your retreat and you go back home and enter the world again, enter samsara, you just untether the mind again and just let it run free again. What are you doing? Do they even know what they're doing? They don't, because most of them, here's the typecast. Here's the typecast. University education, lesbian, usually lesbian or bi, and because they're academics, most of them are very intelligent academic people. They don't want to stop thinking, right? That's the whole thing. So they take up Buddhism, and then on the weekends or in the morning they can meditate for an hour. But then after that, well, you just go about your life, and maybe some sort of thing that's enlightenment will happen to you. Well, but we can't talk about enlightenment because that doesn't exist, because enlightenment is actually thought-free awareness, and they're academics, so they don't want to stop thinking. It's a terrible mess. It's it's a terrible mess. But they're very self-important. They're very self-important. They know they're very smart, but they're not really sure why they're meditating. And the next step with meditation is to pull your attention away even from the sensations, right? That's what they don't do. They don't take that next step of not focusing on the sensations. So it's not just thoughts that pop into your head that you ignore. It's the whole fucking thing, right? The whole thing is samsara. So you have to pull your attention away from going outward, seeking sensations as well. It's not easy. This enlightenment thing is why one person in a billion achieves, realizes their enlightenment, is because this is not fucking easy. I have heard of the headless way. It sounds like chopping off the voice in the head, right? Sounds about right. This thing is crooked. What is it, Danissa? What is the headless way about? It's obviously talking about not thinking, right? Mm. If there's a sure sign that something isn't really spiritual, that it's just a pseudo spirituality, is that if there's a lot of spiritual hokey pokey to do, right? Like there's, oh, you got to do this, and then you do this, and then they go back to step one, right? No, no, no. It's just more doing. It's just more engagement in samsara, isn't it? There she is, late to the party. Right, but you don't need to see yourself in the mirror in order to know that you exist, right? That's what the intuition is. I am not I that's me, I am not that, right? So need we don't go around look with a mirror all day. Some people might. I mean, I look in the mirror quite often, but we don't need to carry a mirror around with us all day to know that we exist, right? We That's the thing, is that we just need to pay attention to the most obvious fucking thing. Just pay attention to the most obvious fucking thing. There. Like, that which is looking does not require the mirror to know that it exists. Yes, Danissa. Like, I pointed this out to one of these non-conceptual guy, not sorry, a non-dualist person. Like there's so many of these non-dualists that have it a little bit askew, right? They just think what they do is their tenant, their credo is I'm everything and everything is me, right? There's one thing and there's I'm everything and everything is me, right? So it's a direct the world is me and I'm the world. But that doesn't work, right? So they don't. And I pointed out to him, I said, well, if you're the world and the world is you on a one-to-one direct level, like, how is it that when the world goes away in dreamless sleep, that you still abide? How is it that the world can disappear in dreamless sleep? So if the world disappears in dreamless sleep, then you must also cease to exist when the world doesn't exist. If you're the world and the world's you, then you must not exist when the world doesn't exist from the first person perspective. And then even point out that it's this. You're just missing the subtle nuance of looking into the mirror and saying, "That's me. I'm not that." That is the position. That is it. That's not a one-to-one. The That's me and I'm that, right? You would be delusional to say that the reflection in the mirror is me and I'm that and that's me, right? You say that's me, but I'm not that. So that's I even pointed out. It's just a subtle little shift in your perspective to make it make sense. Because if it's a one-to-one, there's no room for any growth. There's nothing can change if the world is you and you are the world on a direct one-to-one basis, then there's no room for change. There's no nuance in that model for any type of distinction. So there has to be, even if the distinction is illusory, there has to be a model. Your model has to include an explanation for the discrepancy, for the appearance of divisiveness, right? So, of course, I pointed that out to them, and they didn't say, "Oh, yeah, wow, that's clear. Like, that's me. I'm not that. That makes more sense than what I'm saying." Because the way that they have it, and all of these non dual people will say the same thing is that, "Oh, well, you just deal with your suffering, right? The world, if you're the world and the world is you, then the world must always exist." Right? So samsara must always exist. And that's when they start talking nonsense about nirvana is samsara, right? Because of this direct one-to-one perspective that they have. But they won't listen to my subtle little twist. Like if you're just yes and you're 98% correct, and that last 2% is going to stop you from realizing your enlightenment. But they don't, even after I say that, they don't, not one of them and said, "Oh, wow, that's it. It's such a subtle little nuanced shift." And that's so clear. Thank you, Roy, for clearing that up for me. Not one of them have said that. Mhm. The world arises and passes in the self. So that's why nirvana is not samsara, and the world can go away in dreamless sleep, and you still abide. But they don't want. It just seems like it's almost impossible for a human to admit that they're wrong, even if it's just a slight, subtle adjustment. And the thing is, when you get so close to the end like this, like to the final step, the last step to the mountaintop of enlightenment, you're so close that you're exactly 98% right. So it's so easy to think, well, I'm 100% right, right? If you're that, they actually are. Non-dualists are actually 98% right. But try to get them to see that 2% that's wrong. Good luck, right? Because it's actually working quite well for them, and they're actually doing quite well. But it's not enlightenment. You're not going to realize your enlightenment with that frame of reference, with that perspective. You have to be able to. You have to. And these scientists and these guys, they pay lip service to that, right? Oh, you have to be able to. And it's like, no, you're not, though, are you? Because you have a PhD. So you have to be right. And the other part, though, the other part that I got from, especially from James, who him and I don't have a relationship anymore, is that when you have found the truth, you can't bend from it, right? You can't listen, like, this is fundamental, ultimate truth. So he was accusing me of exactly that, not admitting when I'm wrong. But if you know you're right, you can't. If you know you're right, then you can't adapt what you know to be right in order to make in any way, right? So I will not allow someone to come in and mess with non-conceptuality, because that's the problem that all these other religions have come across, is that the enlightened being says something and then everyone misinterprets it, and it just what they call it what the enlightened person was talking about, and then it becomes completely not that anymore. So I can't let people fuck with the system, right? So that's why James and I are not together anymore. Yeah, so Brahman and Atman, that's, I believe, right? Because there's two words there. Even Hindus, when they say it's the same thing, when they say Brahman is Atman and Atman is Brahman, exactly at the same level as I'm the reflection in the mirror, and the world, and the mirror is me, and the world is me, and I'm the world. Then the Hindus have it wrong too. Why would there be two different words if they're exactly indistinguishable? Why would there be two words? There's two words. There's Brahman and Atman. So that's the state of knowing, seeing this and saying that's me, and I'm not that. Atman is me, but I'm Brahman. So Atman is Brahman. Brahman isn't Atman. Everyone's happy unless you're stuck in your system and can't see what the fuck I'm trying to tell you because you think you're right. Because it's Hinduism and someone has taught me this, so therefore we don't question it anymore. You have to question everything. Nothing's sacrosanct. Sacrosanct? What the fuck is that word? You have to question everything. You can't assume anything to be correct. Sacrosanct. That's it. Sacrosanct. The solution seeker is a telescope. A telescope. I'm more interested in snooping at the people across the lake than I am looking at the moon or the stars, to be honest. But would any high powered what kind of a telescope should I get to spy on the neighbors 5 kilometers away? 5 kilometers? A good pair of binoculars might be good enough, eh? Yeah, I should get binoculars anyway. Is there any way that you could, I don't know, prove mathematically that the physical expansion of the universe means that time is contracting on the other side? Because it seems like the expansion is speeding up. And if there is this extinction event a decade or two away, then that would be the end of time. So my theory is that the space is expanding and time is contracting. But not time, but we wouldn't know it because all the clocks would all be on the earth, all the things that move on the earth would all be changing in frequency at the same rate. So you wouldn't be able to tell through clocks that are all functioning on the same process or whatever on the same planet, they wouldn't register, right? So how could you tell if time was actually speeding up? Okay. But are they though? You got to revolutionize everything, solution seeker. You got to revolutionize everything from a different perspective. What if we kept them separate? What if you just kept them separate? Don't try to mix them because they both mix in as the superposition, right? So I don't believe that there's a thing called space time. There's space and there's time, and they should be kept separate. And they should join up in the singularity, which is the superposition. Right. So there's a psychological time and then there's a physical time of clocks moving. But space, what what my work says is that space and time, the two, whatever the dualities are, right? Whatever, this is all metaphor, right? Solution seeker, it's all metaphor, right? It's all the same message. It's a message, right? So no matter what the dualities are, whether it's space or time or positive or negative or yin and yang, whatever it is, those two should not be mixed together. You will never discover the reality, the singularity by putting together the two illusions, right? The illusions, the appearances arise out of the reality. And you're trying to mix blue and yellow to come up with green. But green is from whence blue and yellow arise. You see what I mean? So why don't you try something different? Why don't you just try keeping space and time completely separate? I don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about. but but why don't you just leave them completely not joined together? I don't know how that would work. Well, take salvia. There's your near death experience without dying. I'm certain that you shouldn't see what Einstein did. Like, quantum mechanics and gravity do not mix. They don't mix. You can't be putting them together. You have to work with them being separate. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or curve, right? The one that I keep using, curve. The green curve is the yellow concave and the blue convex. Right. But they're not causal. There's no causal relationship between convex and concave. So there's no causal relationship between time and space. But then again, when consciousness moves into the digital realm, there will be no such thing as space. It'll all be time based, right? So the computer, the functioning of a program within the software within a computer is all based on time, right? That time would be how the digital realm functions, and there's no space, right? There's no gravity, so there's no spatial extent in that realm of a video game. It's all time based, right? They change relative to. The problem is that they should call it something different than space time. Call it, I don't know. I'm not good at coming up with names. But at the extinction event, everything changes to time. Time will be the the ground on which that world is based, time and thought rather than senses and gravity, right? So time and thought will be the laws that govern how the digital world operates, whereas the physical world, this illusion, operates on gravity and the senses. Or space and time, like the seesaw, right? Teeter totter. But it's not, there aren't really people on the ends pushing. It's the fulcrum in the middle, shifting their attention from one end to the other. That's what causes it to move up and down. So again, we have to To have a concluding theory, you have to include the observer always, right? So you have to show somehow how your very attention, the awareness that's coming through the eyes is the life force, is fundamental reality. And somehow all the actions that occur within the universe and within your world all are dependent upon where you put your awareness. Right. So again, the importance of the observer needs to be put back into science, needs to be put into science, and how we come to know and understand that observer is through thought-free awareness. There's no way to learn to understand what you are and what the observer is without engaging in the one-step path. So that's what science, so all the scientists don't want to give up on science, right? Even though they've been told through Heisenberg's uncertainty principle that you're done. That's it. This is as far as you can go. So they just want to keep pushing science. And that's why every day now there's new discovery where that defies all the laws of physics. Like every second day now, something within astronomy or particle physics is like, oh well, now everything's different now. It's like because it's all just random shit now. It's the universe is just spitting out new narrative. Like it's just spitting out narrative because we won't shut the fuck up and stop asking questions. It's like the universe is saying, I've shown you all that I can possibly show you that's true anymore. So now we're just gonna throw a bunch of fucking random shit in there. Because it seems like no matter how much we think we understand, there's that much more that we don't understand. And they just keep blindly going. So I'm trying to shut this science fucking project down. All of science. And good luck, right? Because it works, because it makes shit. Science makes shit, so therefore it works. Let's not think about the suffering that's going on within our subjective interpretation of this. Yeah, we have to reinsert spirit back into the equation. The mind body problem cannot be fixed. It's like the space-time problem. It can't be fixed using that same model. The elephant in the room that the naked emperor is riding upon. Fuck you. I can't even make videos anymore. I've said it all. Like I just keep repeating. There's nothing new. I can't make anything new up anymore. So I might not even make videos anymore. I've said it all. There's nothing more to say. I can't shed any more light on anything unless something comes to me. But I mean, I've already shown how math is incorrect and all of science is wrong. So I don't know what else I could do. What else could be ignored? I could come up with something new that'll be ignored. Shirtless videos? You know what? I have thought about if there's a goal that our little community could have, that non-conceptuality could have, is to get me on Joe Rogan, right? Because this Terrence Howard guy, I have a hard time listening to people that are just listening to people. So I didn't listen to most of it, but to get me on Joe Rogan, eventually somehow get me on Joe Rogan. Because I believe I have a far more convincing argument and even more devastating to the status quo than what Terrence said. Well, that's what I think, right? Is like Terrence he says a lot of things that he can't back up, right? He's got no really good, reasonable argument for saying what he just said, whereas I've got everything backed up. Like, there are no loose ends to non conceptuality. And Joe and I mean, we'd be best buds, right? Just BS. Yeah, well, he's just saying things. These other people are just saying things too, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson, he says stuff. Words are coming out of his mouth, just like Terrence. But for some reason, people believe him more than they believe Terrence. Maybe because he's such a cocky bastard. He's kind of a condescending know-it-all, isn't he? That Neil deGrasse guy. Seems to me that he is. And the irony of it is that when these guys who are actually arrogant about what they believe, that's these science guys and math guys. And when I look, if you could see yourself from my position, my perspective, well, you'd be embarrassed. You're so wrong. And you're arrogant about being so wrong. Like, it's embarrassing. It's actually embarrassing. Oh, but organizing and working on my website is not things that I do. Do you know the way that I have come to look at it is that it's not really up to me to try to convince people. It's whether the people are worthy and ready of non-conceptuality, right? Non-conceptuality is what it is. I'm not going to change it anymore or try to make it easier for people or try to water it down to get more people involved. It is what it is, and it's the hardest core spirituality that there is. It's the hardest religion there is. It's just bare bones, just spiritual warrior, always on it, right? So I don't expect many people to follow this. So they have to be ready. Maybe you're ready because you're here. Maybe you're ready to engage in the one step path. Yeah, like that that one video of Dobson's paradox. I mean, that shocked me. That was something that I wasn't expecting. Is that paradox? I mean, the semantics of the language is correct, right? The language in that statement is correct, and it shows that the knowledge being language and symbol, is what's incorrect. Like the knowledge is the falsity, right? The knowing, the added putting words to things, putting words to sensations in order so that the appearance of independently existing, separately existing objects arise. Well, that's wrong. That's the falsity. So the knowledge, intellectual understanding, is what's false. Like, how is it that none of these philosophers or mathematicians have talked to me about this? Like, it's a complete ignoring. Like, just right. Like, uh, if I had a PhD and I came up with this stuff, would they still be ignoring me? Like, what's going on here? So going back to admitting that you're wrong. That fucking Edward Frankel was on Kurt's program there, Theories of Everything, berating the string theorists and telling them that they're wrong and that they just need to admit it and just give up. That it's been great for decades. You've been going down the wrong path, and he's telling them that they're wrong and that they need to stop because it was wrong. It's just wrong. String theory. And when I point out, I've emailed him and he's responded once. And after that, of course, he hasn't. But when I point out that mathematics itself is wrong, the whole fucking thing is wrong, does he respond? No, because they're hypocrites. When it comes right down to it, they're all fucking hypocrites and cowards. Page would put it a little more lightly than that they're children. But when you're blah, blah, blahing like an adult, I'm going to treat you like an adult. Well, we'll see how long this ignoring game will play out because I still think that this has to come out. Like more than just a half a dozen people. This has to explode at some point. It's too powerful to just remain unknown, relatively unknown. And this last lady that I contacted, hopefully she's Mary. I mean, her entire paper, I read her academic paper. She's got a few, but she uses Ramana Maharshi as her source material. And I use Ramana Maharshi as my source material. So I'm just like, please let this one be the one. Well, then it's all up to you, solution seeker. No pressure. You have to get your peeps to listen, your academic peeps. Or you don't have to, of course, but so far you're kind of the only into academia. That's true. Right on, man. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Because you're engaging in the practice. They have to engage in the practice. Wow. It's the most important thing ever. Like the immensity of this is like you recognize the immensity of this, right? Like I've had times here, like I'm by myself here, right? And I've had times here where I literally cry because it's so intense. Like this is the biggest thing ever in human history as far as revelations, intellectual revelations. It's the biggest thing in history, right? And I think that's like I remember reading Nisargadatta Maharaj said that maybe the very final obstacle to full realization is simply the belief that you are Brahman, right? Is finally the ego needs to completely accept that you're God. And that's a big last building, right? The jump program, that's a big jump to take, right? That final jump to make it to the next building, to just accept that you're God, right, is huge, right? So that's why the people that read my stuff, they can't accept that it's true because it's so huge. It's just, right? It destroys everything. So no matter how reasonable the argument is, that's backing all this up. Just reason, one's own opinion, right? And perspective. They just can't accept it, right? That everything could be wrong. And that this is actually the final theory that concludes everything. If it wasn't for you people, I really appreciate you guys because it's been a quite a long go and a lot of rejection. Right on. It's a symbiotic relationship here we got going on. Hmm. So we should start our like we should start our investigation from the similarities that we all experience, and that's dreamless sleep, right? The experience of dreamless sleep is exactly identical for everyone. So there's our unity. So why don't we start there instead of the waking state? Why don't we say, all right, well, our unified s- uh, uh, similar experience, identical experience is dreamless sleep. It's all the same for everyone. So why don't we start there? Why don't we make that our frame of reference and then begin our investigation there rather than having it the waking state, which is all different for everyone, right? So we're basing our inquiry on everything that's different, everything that's exterior and different to the self, instead of starting from unity and what's all similar. I know they don't remember it, but that doesn't mean like we all know of it. We know its state, right? We know what it's like to be dreamless, have dreamless sleep, right? It's peaceful and it's rejuvenating, right? Like if people can go without water longer than they can go without sleep before they go crazy and die. People will reject their own experience. Yeah. And also what like if I'm sitting here in thought free awareness and you're sitting there in thought free awareness, then where the only difference is are the senses that are coming in. So the awareness would be the same. If we start measuring everything from a state of relativity itself, if we measure things from a state that's movement itself, then all of those results of those measurements are basically pointless, useless, right? They're irrelevant. They don't mean anything because if you start your inquiry from everything that's moving and different, then I don't see how you're going to get anywhere. Any conclusion that you'll come to will just be a relative conclusion, a relative answer. that really has no meaning. Yeah, and that's why it's used as a base for meditation. One of the best bases for meditation is your own breath, for sure. But then you're still subtly outwardly focused, right? That's one type of meditation, is that you focus on something else in order to you focus on one thing, and that excludes all the thoughts popping into your head and excludes other things coming in. But you have to take it one step back even further, right? When you're not focusing on even senses, right? So that's that subtle, when you're meditating, recognize the mona, the silence, as its own phenomenon. It's not just the lack of thoughts, it's its own thing, right? The mona is its own experience. It's not just the lack of experience. It's the reality. And this is what I believe Buddhists don't recognize. Yeah, I think I'm gonna shut her down as well. I've got always wood stuff. Wood, chainsaw, wood, firewood, wood, cut, chop, mow. All right. Well, this was another good one. Thanks for dropping by, gang. We'll see you next Sunday.